The Alpha was moving from post to post, shirt unbuttoned, body battle-worn, past caring who saw the grief etched into every muscle. He had walked the human borderlands for months, enchanted posters in hand, searching for his missing pup. Then a girl appeared barefoot, quiet, staring at the flyer like she'd seen a ghost. "Alpha, that boy lives in my house," she said, her voice trembling. What she revealed next would tear open old wounds and threaten to burn down everything he thought he'd buried. Ronan used to be a name that made wolves kneel and enemies tremble. Alpha of the Nightfang pack, blessed by the moon, forged in war. But all of that meant nothing after the day his son vanished. No howl, no trail, no body, just empty silence. For over a year, he'd searched every shadowed corner of the realms from ancient shifter ruins to the alleys of human cities. Magic, steel, fury, none of it had brought Finn back. His pack had nearly fallen. His enemies whispered. But he kept moving. Because if the boy was out there, alive, Ronan would find him or die trying. That evening, under a sky split by dying light, he crossed into the human side hooded, shirt half open, exposing the old scars. A street lamp flickered as he posted another missing flyer, his son's face, frozen in time, eyes bright with a smile Ronan could barely remember. He stepped back, whispering, "Moon, help me, someone must have seen him." Then, a soft voice behind him. "Alpha?" He turned. A girl stood barefoot in the grass, eyes wide, finger raised toward the poster. "That missing boy. He lives in my house." The wind bit harder the closer Ronan moved to the human side of the border, but he didn't flinch. Cold meant nothing anymore. He'd long since forgotten what warmth even felt like. He moved like a storm disguised as a man, broad shoulders cutting through the air, chest bare beneath a half-worn coat that no longer fit the Alpha he once was. It had been over a year since Finn vanished, his only son, stolen like a breath in the night, and still no trail, no scent, no clue had brought him peace. Just a hole in his chest that nothing could fill. Once, the Nightfang Alpha had ruled with iron and howl. Packs bowed, enemies scattered. His name echoed through both kingdoms and cursed lands. But all that power, all that strength, meant nothing when your child disappeared, and the only thing left behind was silence. Ronan had searched endlessly through witch dens, rogue camps, even dared the cursed bonewoods. He'd begged, threatened, bled. No one had seen the boy. Some dared whisper he was dead. Ronan made sure they didn't whisper again. Now, cloaked in illusion magic, he crossed into the human outskirts with a single purpose: to keep looking. Twilight dripped across the sky like blood, painting rusted rooftops in fading gold. He stopped beneath a crooked street lamp and reached into the worn satchel, slung across his back. Another flyer. Another false hope. His fingers trembled as he pressed the sheet against the pole. The boy's face stared back, young, smiling, oblivious to the war his absence had started. Finn. The ceiling rune glowed faintly as it bound the flyer in place. Ronan stepped back, shoulders rising with a shallow breath. "Please," he whispered to no one. "Let someone know his face." The wind gave no answer. Only the flickering of the streetlight, mocking his plea. Then a voice. "Alpha?" He turned fast, hand instinctively twitching toward the dagger sheathed at his hip. But it wasn't danger that stood before him. It was a girl, small, barefoot, hair hanging in soft tangles down her shoulders. Her eyes didn't belong to a child, they were too old, too steady. She pointed at the flyer. "The boy. He's in our house." His blood stopped moving. "What?" She nodded slowly, gaze fixed on the image. "He doesn't talk much. But sometimes, he cries. At night. He whispers your name." Ronan's throat locked. That voice, those words. After a year of nothing, it struck like a blade between ribs. He took a step toward her, heart hammering, every instinct screaming caution. "You're sure it's him?" The girl didn't look away. "I know his face." Everything around them faded, the wind, the dark. Even the ache in his bones. All that remained was the distant echo of his son's laughter and the whisper of a truth too painful to hope for. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low. Lyra. He looked at her, really looked. Something was different. She was human, yes, but she carried herself like one who had lived through things children shouldn't. Take me, he said. Now. She hesitated, eyes flickering with some invisible fear. If my mom sees you, I won't hurt her. His voice cracked. I just need to see him. Lyra studied him for a moment longer. Then she turned. This way. And without another word, she walked barefoot into the dark. Ronan followed. No questions. No breath. Just the rhythm of his heartbeat, wild and desperate, pounding in his ears. The posters he had once scattered like prayers now fluttered behind him, forgotten. If she was telling the truth, if this wasn't another cruel trick, then tonight, everything would change. Or break. Again. Either way, the Alpha would face it. The girl didn't look back as she walked, only moved forward, quiet and barefoot over cracked pavement and weeds that had long claimed the edges of the road. The street lamps flickered above like dying stars. Ronan followed, keeping a few paces behind, his senses sharp, pulse hammering beneath skin. Every step took him further from the comfort of forest and Fong, deeper into a part of the world that reeked of rust, oil, and human neglect. She couldn't have been more than 10. Yet she walked with the certainty of someone who had seen too much. Each movement was deliberate, calm, as though she knew exactly where this would end. That scared him more than anything. The houses around them leaned into shadow-peeling paint, crooked windows, the quiet weight of secrets behind thin walls. A chain-link fence rattled in the distance. Somewhere, a dog barked once, and then fell silent. Ronan's boots crunched over broken glass, his eyes darting to every window, every flicker of movement behind faded curtains. But no one came out. No one looked. The air had a different weight here. He could feel it, a wrongness beneath the skin of the place. Magic, faint and old, threaded through the wind like whispers, with no mouth to speak them. Lyra's voice came without warning. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone. Ronan slowed his step. Then why did you? She stopped at the end of the block and turned toward him. Because he's sad. And because when he says your name, he sounds like he's trying not to disappear. The ache behind Ronan's ribs cracked wide. His mouth opened, but there were no words strong enough to carry what he felt. He's not normal, she added. Neither am I. What do you mean? He asked, stepping closer. Lyra looked up at him, those strange, sharp eyes not belonging to any child. Sometimes I hear people's thoughts. Not all of them. Just the loud ones. She tilted her head. Yours are screaming. He went still. I know you're not human, she said, without fear. I knew the second I saw you. You smell like storms. He couldn't stop the breath that caught in his throat. And your mother? She doesn't like wolves. Her expression changed, then flattened into something unreadable. She didn't always used to be like this. But she's scared now. Angry, especially since he came. Ronan's body tensed. Who? Lyra looked away. You'll see. They kept walking. The houses thinned out the deeper they went, swallowed by wild overgrowth and broken fences. This part of the town didn't have street names anymore, just faded signs and walls scrawled with symbols Ronan didn't like. It wasn't just poverty here, it was rot. And something beneath it. They stopped in front of a narrow house, 2 stories, paint chipped and windows dark. Vines crawled up the siding like veins. The porch steps were warped, the door barely clinging to its hinges. This is it, she said, voice lower now. He's in the upstairs room. My mom makes him stay quiet when the man's here. What man? Lyra didn't answer right away. He comes at night sometimes, talks to her in the kitchen. They whisper. I pretend to sleep, but I hear things. Words that feel heavy. What kind of words? She hesitated. Packs. Money. Names. Yours. Ronan's breath stilled. Mine? She nodded. She said you'd come eventually. That if you found out, everything would burn. His jaw clenched. She's right. A car passed down the block. Slow. Watching. Then it was gone. She doesn't know I followed her once, Lyra said. Last month. She took something from under the floorboards and left through the back. I tracked her. Ronan arched a brow. You tracked her? She left the window open, Lyra said like it was obvious. I saw her go into the woods with him. The man. They were carrying a sack. It smelled like blood. He was silent. Cold rage boiled under his skin. Steady, patient. He'd known evil in his life, seen it in battles, in betrayals, in the hunger of rogue eyes. But what Lyra described was worse. It was quiet evil. Domestic. Careful. Hidden behind soft voices and locked doors. Ronan looked at the house again. Is he inside now? She shook her head. No. He only comes after dark. And your mother? She's always watching. She locks the second floor when she leaves. Ronan scanned the property. The broken fence. The curtained windows. The silence. It all smelled like a trap. You shouldn't be the one showing me this, he said softly. No one else would, she replied. No one listens to girls with dirty feet. His throat tightened. I don't care what she says, Lyra whispered. That boy doesn't belong to her, and when he cries, the house feels like it's breaking. Like it wants to spit the truth out. Ronan looked at her. Really looked. This child had been carrying too much. More than any heart should hold. You did the right thing, he said. I know, she replied. But it's going to get worse now, isn't it? Yes, he said. But not for you. She nodded, as if she already understood. Then she turned and slipped through the gate. Ronan followed, teeth clenched, heart pounding like thunder beneath a rising storm. The house groaned as the wind pressed against its walls, as if it too was tired of keeping secrets. Ronan stood just behind Lyra, shadow-cloaked and silent, watching her fingers fumble with the bent latch on the gate. It creaked open with a sound that made his beast bristle. The yard was overgrown, thistles clawing up through broken stone, and every step toward the porch felt like walking deeper into a snare. She looked back once, just a flicker of her eyes, then stepped onto the warped boards. He followed. The door loomed ahead, paint peeling in strips like old skin. Before she knocked, he gently touched her shoulder. She paused. He could feel her heartbeat under his fingers, fast, but steady. If something goes wrong, he murmured, run. Don't wait for me. I won't leave him, she whispered. He gave a single nod. Then she knocked. A pause. Then footsteps. Slow, unhurried. A lock turned, another. The door opened. The woman who stood in the frame looked nothing like a monster. She was slight, soft-featured, with dark curls pinned back and a worn cardigan wrapped tight around her like armor. Her eyes flicked to Ronan quick, calculating, and then settled on Lyra with something between affection and control. Lyra, she said gently. Who's this? Lyra shifted. He's just someone looking for help. Claire, he could feel her name on the air, like a curse disguised as kindness, tilted her head, smiling thinly. We don't open our door to strangers. I'm not a stranger, Ronan said, stepping forward. She stiffened, just slightly. Enough. I'm looking for a boy, he continued. He'd be about 6. Brown hair. Bright eyes. His name is Finn. Her face remained neutral. Perfectly so. No one by that name lives here, she said. I didn't say he lived here. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not fear. Something colder, controlled. Is there a reason you think he'd be here? She asked. He's missing, Ronan said. Taken from my land a year ago. And your daughter just told me she knows where he is. Lyra lowered her eyes, lips pressed thin. Claire's voice didn't raise, didn't waver. She imagines things. Talks to shadows. You shouldn't take her seriously. She knew his name. She hears things. Claire said with a soft chuckle. Wandering ears. Make stories out of them. Ronan took a step closer. The change was subtle, her body tensing, hand gripping the edge of the door. Not enough to draw attention. But he saw it. Felt it. She was lying. I'd like to look inside. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'd rather you didn't. His gaze darkened. That wasn't a request. For a moment, silence hung between them like a blade. Then her voice lowered, calm and clipped. You come onto my property with a child and threats. You should leave before I call someone. Go ahead, he said. But I don't think the people you'd call would want the wrong doors opened. A breath passed. She didn't blink. Then, Lyra. Inside. The girl hesitated. Claire's tone sharpened. Now. Lyra obeyed, eyes flicking to Ronan, full of silent apology. Claire moved to close the door, but he placed a hand against it. Not forceful yet. I'm not leaving without him, he said. There's no boy here, she said again. And if you force your way in, I won't be the only one you'll answer to. That settled it. The way she said it. The chill beneath the words. She wasn't acting alone. You're protecting someone, he murmured. Maybe more than one. Her lips parted just slightly. Not in denial but in defense. Ronan leaned in, voice low. If he's in this house, and you've kept him from me, there's not a force in this world that will keep me from tearing it apart to get him back. For a heartbeat, her mask cracked. Barely. But he saw it, not guilt. Fear. Then the door slammed shut. He could have broken it down. Could have shifted right there and let the wolf do what it was bred to do. But not yet. Not with Lyra inside. Not with too many questions still gnawing at the edges. He stepped back, fists clenched. From the upstairs window, the curtain shifted. Small fingers on the glass. A child's face, pale in the dim light. He was too far to see clearly. But he knew. His son was inside. And the house reeked of lies. The night in the house felt heavier than usual. The walls breathed with silence, but Lyra could feel something else lurking beneath it. Tension coiled like a serpent beneath the floorboards. Her mother hadn't said much after the man left. Just paced. Clean surfaces, already clean. Locked doors that didn't need locking. When the sun vanished and the lamps were dimmed, Claire's voice was soft and clipped, too calm, as if any crack in her tone would let the whole thing unravel. Lyra had learned long ago how to read the silence between words. She waited in bed until she heard the soft creak of her mother's door closing, then the click of the lock. Not unusual. Claire always locked her bedroom, even from her own daughter. Especially from her own daughter. But tonight, Lyra wasn't going to stay quiet. She slipped out from beneath the thin blanket, her feet silent against the floorboards. The house was old, and it remembered everything. Every step was a risk, every groan of wood a warning. But she moved like shadow, breath low, heart steady. She knew how to blend. She'd been doing it her whole life. At the end of the hallway, her mother's door stood like a sealed vault painted white, handle polished and worn smooth. But Claire had made a mistake. She'd forgotten to take the ring of keys off the counter. Lyra had watched her toss them there earlier with a distracted sigh, too rattled by the alpha's visit to follow her usual rituals. She slipped down the stairs, avoiding the third step. It always creaked, and found the keys exactly where she'd left them. Cold metal kissed her fingers as she took them in hand, her palms damp. Back up, past the shadows. Past the door that hid the boy, Finn silent as ever. At her mother's door, Lyra paused. She wasn't afraid of punishment. Not really. What scared her more was what she might find inside. What she might not find. She eased the key into the lock and turned. It clicked open like a secret exhaling. The room was still, and darker than the rest of the house. Curtains drawn tight, no photos on the walls. Just a mirror, a bed, and a tall dresser covered in bottles of perfume and faded brushes that never seemed to be used. But the scent, that strange, cloying perfume Claire wore when certain people came to the house, lingered in the air like smoke and rot. Lyra moved toward the dresser first, careful not to disturb anything. Drawers filled with scarves, papers, old letters. Nothing strange. Nothing useful. She turned to the floorboards. Third plank from the bed, near the edge. She'd seen her mother kneel here once when she thought no one was watching, slipping something beneath the floor with shaking hands. Lyra knelt now, fingertips sliding along the seams of the wood. There, a tiny gap, worn just enough. She pried it loose. A breath caught in her throat. Beneath the plank was a cloth-wrapped bundle. Soft, heavy. She pulled it out and sat back, placing it on the bed. Her hands worked at the knot, slow and deliberate. Inside was a journal. Old. Leather-bound. The edges of the pages curled and stained. She opened it to the middle, expecting notes. Maybe numbers. But what greeted her was worse. Names. Dozens of them. Not written in ink, but in something darker, thicker, dried in copper-red lines across the pages. Next to each name was a symbol twisted, ancient, like runes made from bone and fong. Lyra's eyes scanned the list. She didn't know most of them, but her stomach turned all the same. This wasn't a diary, it was a record. Then she saw it. Finn. Written small, almost hidden in the corner. But it was there, a blood sigil beside it. She flipped backward, heart pounding. More names. More symbols. Dates. Notes in hurried, looping script. Nightfang. Ronin, unconfirmed sighting. Child marked use delay spell if contact made. The letters blurred as her breath shortened. Delay spell? What did that mean? Her fingers gripped the edge of the page. She turned again. This time, to the back of the journal. There, on the final page, a drawing. A map, just a few rough lines. Arrows pointing to meeting places, symbols she didn't recognize. And a name circled twice. Kyle. She didn't know who Kale was. But the fear in her mother's eyes when that name had been whispered once, just once on the phone weeks ago, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't just about Finn. This was about something bigger. And her mother was part of it. Lyra stood, hands trembling. She looked down at the journal, the dried blood on its pages, the names carved in silence. Then she did the one thing she wasn't supposed to do. She tore out the page with Finn's name, folded it, slipped it into her dress. She replaced the journal exactly where she found it, plank and all. By the time she returned to her room, her breath had steadied, but her heart had not. The boy in the next room was no longer a mystery. He was a target. And now, so was she. The sky was cracked with moonlight when Lyra slipped out the back door. She didn't run at first. She couldn't. Her legs felt like twigs ready to snap, her breath locked in the cage of her chest. The paper in her pocket scratched against her side like it had teeth, biting every time she moved. She clutched it as if the truth might tear loose and vanish if she let go. The wind outside had teeth too sharp, cold, whispering warnings she couldn't unhear. Shadows shifted along the alley behind the house, but she didn't slow. She couldn't think of who might be watching. Couldn't think of her mother sleeping behind locked doors. Couldn't think of what would happen if Claire woke and found the journal page missing. She just thought of Finn. Alone. Small. Crying through the walls when he thought no one could hear. And, the Alpha, he would know what to do. She didn't know where he was, not exactly. But her feet did. Her memory did. She followed the streets back to the place where she'd first found him, near the lamp that stuttered in the wind like it was afraid to stay lit. He wasn't there, but the air remembered him. So did the quiet. She turned and started down the street, breath coming in fast clouds, heart pounding. One block. Then another. She passed the broken fence. The alley with the rusted van. Then, she saw him. Ronan stood near the edge of the woods, half wrapped in shadow, eyes bright in the dark like twin embers waiting to catch fire. He didn't move when she approached, just watched. Like he already knew. Lyra stumbled to a stop in front of him, trembling, and pulled the page from her pocket. "I found this," she whispered. It was hidden in the floor. He took it gently from her hands. The paper was soft with age, edges frayed. He unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the symbols, the names, the blood-dark writing. And then he saw it. Finn. He didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Just stared like the name itself might shatter in his hands if he blinked too hard. His fingers traced the sigil beside it. Old magic. Marking magic. Used for claiming, for hiding. Lyra watched his face shift. From confusion to rage, to something far worse, fear. She kept it under the floor, Lyra said, voice low. There were others. More names. But this one, she circled it. Twice. Ronan's hands clenched the paper. The sigil, it's blood-bound. Tied to a concealment spell. That's why I couldn't send him. Why I couldn't feel him. I think she's working with someone, Lyra said. There was another name, Kale. At that, his head snapped up. Kale? She nodded, the word bitter on her tongue. I know that name, he muttered. Rogue Alpha. Cast out for blood dealing. I thought he was dead. Maybe he should have been, Lyra whispered. Ronan folded the paper and slipped it inside his coat, close to his heart. He's not just missing, she said. They're using him, hiding him. Maybe worse. His jaw flexed. They've marked him. That means they plan to keep him, trade him, or, he stopped, voice cutting short like it couldn't bear to finish. Lyra didn't ask him to. Ronan stepped back, eyes scanning the sky, the trees, the road behind her. The moonlight painted him silver, but there was nothing soft about him now. He was steel-coiled under skin, barely leashed. How long? He asked. How long has she had him? I don't know, Lyra said. He came last year. I remember. It was raining. He was quiet. Scared. She said he had no one. That the gods sent him. Ronan closed his eyes, a breath shuddering out of him like he'd been holding it for a lifetime. She lied, he whispered. She took him from me. And let him believe I didn't come. Lyra's throat burned. I think she wanted to keep him, she said. But the man she works with, he's coming back soon. She's scared. I can feel it. Ronan opened his eyes. All this time, he said, voice hollow. He was just a few walls away, and I didn't feel him. She used magic, Lyra said quickly. It wasn't your fault. It was, he said. Because I stopped trusting my instincts, because I let grief dull the edge. He turned away for a moment, fists clenched at his sides. Then he faced her. You did something most wouldn't have dared, Lyra. You saw the truth, and you brought it to me. She blinked up at him, eyes wet. I just wanted someone to listen. He knelt before her then, not in submission, but something deeper. Something more sacred. I'm listening now. She reached out, fingers brushing his sleeve. What happens next? She asked. Ronan stood, gaze burning toward the house they'd left behind. I take my son back, he said. And I burn whatever lies kept him from me. The house was asleep when Ronan returned. The windows blinked with no light. No sound moved behind the walls. But he could feel the lie of it. It wasn't sleep. It was silence born of guilt, of fear. He could smell it in the air layered between the wilted garden and rusted gutters, a stillness too heavy, too deliberate. Lyra waited by the edge of the street, just beyond the reach of the porch light. He had told her to stay there, and she'd only nodded. No protest. Just trust. Ronan crossed the yard without a sound, boots soft over grass. The back door was locked. It didn't matter. With one twist of his fingers, the latch cracked, and the door creaked inward like it had been waiting. Inside, the house was a skeleton. Shadows clung to every surface. He could feel the magic now, the same warding spells that had once made this place invisible to him. Clever. Cheap tricks laced with blood binding and illusion. But under moonlight, all things revealed themselves to a wolf. He moved through the kitchen first, senses wide open, every step deliberate. His beast prowled just beneath the surface of his skin, hunger not for violence, but for truth. He passed the staircase. The second floor called to him, but not the way it should have. The energy pulled down, not up. Basement. He followed it like scent. The trail was faint, muted under layers of suppression spells, but it was there, a familiar flicker. The scent of soil and old wood and blood. Not fresh. Not spilled. Bound. He found the door behind a crooked shelf in the hallway, half hidden by cleaning supplies and useless clutter. The handle was newer than the rest of the fixtures in the house. Reinforced, bolted with runes carved into the frame. He ran his fingers over them. Old magic. Cruel magic. He broke it with a growl. The door swung inward, releasing a breath of cold, damp air. Steps descended into darkness, but Ronan didn't hesitate. He moved fast, quiet, deeper into the belly of the house. Halfway down, the scent hit him fully. Thin. His knees nearly gave out. It was old and buried under layers of fear, but it was real. He reached the bottom of the stairs, where the basement opened into a narrow room with concrete walls and a low ceiling. The only light came from a flickering bulb strung from a wire. There was a mattress on the floor, a blanket, a chair. Nothing else. And in the far corner, curled like a whisper, trying not to be heard, a boy. Hair tangled, knees pulled to his chest, eyes half shut, body too small for his age. Ronan stopped. The boy didn't move. For a moment, Ronan forgot how to breathe. Finn? The name cracked out of him like a prayer. The boy stirred, slow, groggy. He looked up, eyes squinting in the light. And Ronan saw it. Recognition. It flashed across the boy's face, confusion first, then fear, then something deeper. Hope. Dad. The word was small, hoarse, fragile. But it was enough. Ronan crossed the room in 2 strides and dropped to his knees. He didn't reach out at first, afraid if he touched the boy, he might vanish again. But Finn didn't pull away. He launched himself forward, burying his face in Ronan's chest. A sound tore from Ronan's throat. Not a growl. Not a sob. Something broken and holy. He wrapped his arms around the boy, holding him like he was something lost to time, something stolen by fate and finally returned. I found you, he whispered, pressing his forehead to Finn's hair. I found you. The boy clung tighter. I thought you weren't coming, he said. She said you wouldn't come. I never stopped, Ronan said. Never. Not for a second. Finn shook in his arms, thin body trembling with months of silence. Ronan breathed him in his scent, his warmth, even the magic still clinging to him. He could feel it now, woven into the boy's skin. A spell meant to erase his presence, to dull his bond. Whoever did this had known exactly what they were doing. He pulled back slightly, hands cradling Finn's face. You're safe now. I'm here. Finn nodded, tears tracking down his cheeks. Then, footsteps. Above them. Ronan went still. Not Claire. He knew her pace now. This was heavier. Sharper. A man's weight. Finn flinched. He's back, the boy whispered. The man. The one with the black eyes. Ronan's eyes burned gold. He stood, placing Finn behind him. Stay here. Don't move until I say. He turned toward the stairs, rage blooming in his chest like wildfire. The joy of reunion still echoed behind him. But the storm had arrived. The door above slammed open. Heavy boots on old floorboards. The sound of someone who didn't care to be quiet. The kind of man who thought the house and everyone in it belonged to him. Ronan didn't need a scent to know it was the one Claire had tried to hide with soft smiles and silence. The one Lyra had whispered about. The one whose presence turned the air foul. Finn crouched behind him, pressed against the wall, wide-eyed and trembling. Ronan looked down once, met his gaze, and gave a slow nod. Then he turned toward the stairs. He took them 2 at a time, barefoot now, moving like a shadow wrapped in muscle. The moment he reached the main floor, the stench hit him wolf, but wrong. Wild. Sour with blood magic. And there he was. Standing in the center of the living room like he owned it. A tall, rangy figure wrapped in a long coat, black eyes gleaming with the oily sheen of dark rituals. The door hung open behind him. The knight followed him in. Kale. Of course it was him. Ronan had smelled his rot on the pages of the journal Lyra had given him. Kale turned at the sound of Ronan's approach, lips pulling back over teeth too sharp, too white. Well, well. The famous Alpha, he sneered. I was wondering when you'd crawl in. Ronan didn't answer. He didn't speak. He let his silence speak for him as the golden burn of his eyes brightened, heat rising through his blood. It was a terrible thing, the quiet right before fury. Kale chuckled. You should be grateful. The boy's alive. Isn't he? Could have sold him to worse. But Claire's soft thing got attached. She marked him, Ronan growled. Bound him with sigils like an animal. Kale shrugged. Business. The old ways pay well when you know how to sell them. Ronan stepped forward. The floor groaned beneath his weight. His hands curled into fists, claws just beneath the skin. Kale grinned wider. Still playing noble alpha? You're out of your depth here, Ronan. This isn't your forest. This is my hunt. Then he shifted. Bones cracked, muscles split, fur ripped through skin like thorn through silk. He didn't scream, only laughed as his form twisted into something monstrous. His wolf was too long in the limbs, his back arched like a beast that had forgotten how to be human. The black eyes remained, soulless and hungry. Ronan's shift came faster, smoother. He didn't lose himself in it, he became it. Where Kale was chaos, Ronan was precision. Alpha to the bone. They collided in the center of the room. Claws clashed, teeth snapped. The walls shook with the weight of their fury. Ronan drove Kale back, blow after blow, but the rogue was slippery, ducking, twisting, striking low with poisoned claws. Furniture shattered. The couch split in two. A lamp exploded in sparks. Blood sprayed across the wallpaper. Ronan's. He ignored it. Kale lunged, catching his side with a ragged swipe, but Ronan twisted and caught him by the throat, slamming him against the wall hard enough to crack plaster. You took my son, Ronan growled. You broke the bond. Kale snarled, spit flying. You left him to be taken. Ronan's fist drove into his ribs. 1, 2, 3 bones crunched. Then movement. From the hallway, Lyra appeared, panting. Her eyes wide but shining. Behind her, Finn crept forward, his hand clutched in hers. Don't, she cried. Kale wrenched free, leapt across the room with unnatural speed, barreling toward the children. Ronan roared, launching after him, but he was too far. Then Lyra raised her hand. Not in fear. In focus. The air shimmered. The spell hit Kale mid-leap, raw, untrained, but pure. Magic born from instinct, not study. A pulse of silver light knocked him off course. He hit the wall with a snarl. Finn, small but brave, threw the blanket from the basement, still laced with the blood sigil, straight at the rogue. It landed on Kale's back, sizzling with enchantment. Ronan was there in the next breath. His claws drove deep into Kale's side. The rogue howled, twisted, bit down hard on Ronan's shoulder, but Ronan didn't flinch. He grabbed Kale by the scruff, yanked him backward, and with one final, savage growl, drove him through the front door and into the yard, splinters exploding around them. They hit the ground hard, limbs tangled, the moon above them like a watching god. Kale slashed wildly, desperate now, bleeding from half a dozen wounds. His arrogance was gone. Now there was only fear. You don't belong in this world. Ronan growled, voice rough, wolf and man layered together. Kale spat blood. Neither do you. Then Ronan's jaws closed around his throat. It was fast. Final. The rogue stopped moving. The wind settled. Ronan stood over the body, chest heaving, blood staining his fur. Behind him, footsteps, small ones on the porch. He turned. Finn. Lyra. Watching with wide eyes, still alive, still whole. Lyra stepped forward, took Finn's hand again. You found him, she whispered. Ronan shifted back, crouching before them, blood still drying on his skin. He opened his arms. Finn didn't hesitate. Lyra followed. And in that moment, beneath the moon, with the enemy dead at his feet and the 2 children pressed against his chest, Ronan didn't feel like a monster. He felt like a father again. The sun hadn't yet risen when the house surrendered. Smoke drifted in the air, not from fire, but from the remnants of broken magic. The sigils Claire had etched into the floor, into the walls, into the bones of the house, were fading now, losing their grip as Kale's death unraveled the last of their hold. Ronan stood in the living room, blood still drying on his skin, while the silence pressed down. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in every shadow. Footsteps creaked above. He turned as Claire descended the stairs, slowly, as if gravity itself weighed heavier on her than it should. Her hair was undone, eyes hollow, one hand gripping the banister with fingers white and trembling. She didn't run, didn't scream. She only looked at Ronan like a ghost seeing its own grave. It was never supposed to go this far, she said quietly. Ronan didn't speak. His gaze locked on her with a calm that was worse than rage. Claire stepped into the ruined room. eyes flicking toward the front door, where Cale's body still lay beneath a sheet of silence. She swallowed. He said he'd only hide the boy, just until the price was high enough. And you believed him, Ronan said, voice raw. No. Her eyes shone with something twisted regret, maybe, or guilt. I knew what he was. I thought if I could keep the child close, he'd be safe. Safe? His voice dropped into something cold. You kept him in a basement. Her lip trembled. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Claire looked toward the hallway, where Lyra stood at the edge of the frame, watching. Her small face was tight, eyes wide and wet. Behind her, Finn stood half-hidden, one hand still clinging to the hem of her shirt. Claire's voice cracked. I did what I could for them. I fed them. Protected them from him when I could. You let it happen, Lyra whispered, the words as sharp as claws. You let him hurt people. I tried to protect you, Claire snapped, but her voice broke in the middle. I thought if I gave Cale what he wanted, he'd spare us. He never would've, Ronan said. And you knew that. Claire's knees buckled as she sank to the floor, hands covering her face. I was just trying to survive. But you made them suffer to do it, he said. She didn't answer. Couldn't. From the corner of his eye, Ronan saw Lyra move. She stepped into the room slowly, her feet silent against the broken boards. She stopped in front of her mother, small fists clenched. I waited for you to tell me the truth, she said, voice trembling. But you kept lying. Claire looked up, eyes red. I didn't know how to protect you. Lyra stared at her for a long moment, then stepped back. And didn't look at her again. When the authorities came, those who handled shifter crimes, the ones who moved between the veils of the world, they took Claire quietly. She didn't fight. Didn't scream. Just walked to the marked car and sat inside like someone finally too tired to run from their own weight. The door closed. And she was gone. The house was left in ruins. Ronan stood with the children on the porch, the sky lightening slowly behind them. Dawn crawled over the rooftops, painting gold over decay. It didn't feel like a beginning, not yet. But it wasn't an ending either. Finn leaned against him, small hand curled in his. His scent, faint but steady now, pulsed with recognition pack. Blood, bond. Ronan looked down to see Lyra sitting on the steps. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, face half hidden behind shadows. The girl who had broken every rule to speak truth. The girl who had saved his son. She didn't cry. Not anymore. He walked over and crouched beside her. You don't have to say anything, he said. She looked at him. Where will I go? He didn't answer right away. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out the blood-marked journal page, her proof. Her courage-made paper, and placed it beside her. With us, he said. She blinked slowly, as if trying to decide if she believed him. Claire was your mother, he said gently. But she wasn't your home. Lyra's eyes welled up. She bit her lip hard to keep it steady. I don't want to forget her, she whispered. You won't, he said. But you'll be safe now. You both will. She glanced toward Finn, who was busy tracing something in the dirt with a stick. For the first time, he wasn't watching the door or flinching at every sound. He was just a boy again. Lyra wiped her face with her sleeve. Ronan stood, offered his hand. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. Later, at the cabin deep in the forest where the warded trees stood tall and the air smelled like pine and rain, Ronan watched the two children fall asleep in the same bed. Finn curled beside Lyra, their fingers tangled together under the blanket. It would take time. Healing didn't happen in silence, but they were no longer alone. He sat by the fire, his body aching, his soul heavier than it had ever been, but something inside had shifted. Not peace. Not yet. But maybe the start of it. Blood had been spilled. But bonds had been formed. And for the first time in moons, Ronan let his eyes close knowing they were safe, and he was not alone. The forest was quiet the morning of the rite. Mist clung low to the ground, curling between tree roots like breath held too long. Light broke gently through the canopy, silver and soft, kissing the moss-covered earth. The circle had been drawn ancient and sacred, etched in stone and bloodline, in a clearing where Nightfang Alphas had named heirs and sworn bonds for generations. Ronan stood at the center, shoulders bare. The old mark of his lineage a dull scar across his chest. Around him, the pack gathered in silence, watching. They hadn't seen him like this in a long time. Not since before the fire. Before the loss. They'd watched their alpha unravel once, and now they watched something stitch itself back together. To one side, Finn stood, eyes bright and wide, hair wild from sleep, the bruises beneath his skin long faded. He held his father's coat in his arms, too big for him, but he clutched it like it was armor. He said nothing. But his silence no longer carried fear. And to the other side stood Lyra. Dressed in a simple tunic, her hands clasped in front of her, she looked out of place, human-born among wolves, fragile in a world of claws and tradition. But her gaze didn't waver. She held her spine straight, chin lifted, like someone who had already passed every test that mattered. She had come through fire. Through lies, through blood. Now she stood on the threshold of something else. Ronan turned to her, and the pack parted to let her step forward. Her feet made no sound as she crossed the ring. When she reached him, he knelt not in submission, but in reverence, he held out a blade. Not for blood, for choice. She took it, small hands steady. Tradition said she had to speak. Not much. Just her name, and the one she chose to carry. She looked up at the pack, some watching with curiosity, others with wary eyes, but none challenged her, not after what she'd done. Not after the way she'd stood beside their alpha, beside his son, and bled for truth. I was born Lyra, she said, voice clear. She glanced at Ronan, then at Finn. And I choose Nightfang. The wind stirred. The trees shifted like they were listening. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cried out, and then all was still. Ronan rose. He took the blade from her and sliced it across his palm, slow, deliberate, blood-welled, bright and honest. He pressed that hand to her shoulder, marking her the old way. No spell, no sigil. Just blood and vow. You are of this pack now, he said. By choice. By bond. By blood not of birth, but of courage. The others bowed their heads. And then, slowly, one by one they howled. It began soft, a low ripple through the trees, and then rose higher, stronger, until the sky itself seemed to listen. It wasn't a morning song. Not like the ones Ronan had sung in the nights after losing Finn. Not the quiet howls he'd whispered alone in the dark. This one was different. It rang with pride. With belonging. With joy. Ronan tipped his head back and let the sound rise from his chest, deep and full. It split the stillness, shattered the ache that had lived in his bones for far too long. For the first time in moons, he howled not for what he had lost, but for what he'd found. Lyra smiled. A real one. No edges. No weight behind it. Finn ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist, burying his face in the folds of her tunic. She laughed, surprised, and held him tight. Ronan watched them, his chest full of a warmth he hadn't dared feel in so long. Something he thought had died with grief now pulsed again. Slow and sure. The pack had changed, so had he. Later, when the ritual was done and the circle broken, he sat with them beside the fire. Finn curled up in his lap, already half asleep. Lyra rested beside him, head on his shoulder, her fingers twined with his. No one said it aloud, but they all felt it. The Alpha had a family again. Not the one fate gave him, but the one he chose. And for once, fate didn't fight him for it. That night, under a sky full of stars, the Nightfang name echoed through the woods again. Not as a warning, not as a legend, but as a promise.